The Lincoln Navigator is entering its 26th year in production, so let's take a look at where it started versus where it's at now. From the get-go, the Navigator had an upper hand in the market compared to the Escalade. The Navigator first came out in 1998 versus the Escalade coming out in 1999. And similar to the Escalade being based off the Tahoe and Yukon, the Navigator was based off of the Expedition. This was a first. All you could really get was a GMC Yukon Denali if you wanted a high-optioned, large SUV from an American brand. Then in 1998, the Navigator rolled around and it had heads turning. And while of course you could have had a Range Rover, it didn't have the road presence that the Navigator does. At the time, at least. One thing the Navigator lacked, however, is barn doors on the rear hatch. Ford has never had a car that had the rear barn doors except for the Excursion, which is their version of a Suburban, but basically on steroids. Similar to the Escalade of that era, you had big, comfy seats that were like a recliner, as well as wood steering wheel, and this one even had heated and cooled seats. And let's not forget it had lit-up running boards all the way back in 1999. The Navigator was originally offered with a 5.4-liter V8 engine that you could get optioned in either rear-wheel drive or 4x4. In 2003, the Navigator got a full refresh. However, the Escalade beat it to the punchline in 2002 with a refresh. This body-style Navigator was to die for. It had amazing looks, amazing features, and unfortunately, it still lost to the Escalade. However, it got catapulted in the spotlight from the hit movie Are We There Yet?, where Nick Pearson's, also played by Ice Cube, kind of modified his Navigator and had spinners on it. It looked really, really cool. Lincoln didn't stray far from the original design of the Navigator on its second generation, keeping the back end very similar, just a little more refined and refreshed. On the interior, however, it received major updates. I still think this interior looks really nice even in today's day and age. You had these really big, comfy seats like the previous generation, a nice wood steering wheel, and nice wood accents all throughout. That didn't even look that trashy. For today's standards, at least. It had this really nice kind of electric-looking gauge display that looked very classical, timeless, and really easy to use, unlike modern cars. It also came equipped with a touchscreen system and a nice little clock. And then you could fold this little piece down right here and it'd have a little Lincoln logo that would pop up. Just a nice little touch of luxury. And yes, similar to the Escalade, Lincoln had a pickup truck as well called the Lincoln Blackwood. It had carpet floor liners for the bed and then this weird dual tailgate and then a tonneau cover that came standard. It really wasn't usable whatsoever, unlike the Escalade EXT. And then in the mid-2000s, it got changed to the Lincoln Mark LT, and it was literally just an F-150 with a Lincoln grille and Lincoln logos. But I will say, this red with all that chrome does look relatively nice. And then in 2007, the Lincoln Navigator got its biggest redesign yet, similar with the Cadillac Escalade though, of course. However, this was the first year that the Lincoln Navigator came in an L or an extended version, while the Escalade had been coming out in that model since 2002 in the Escalade ESV. The Ford Excursion had already ended production way back in 2005, so it was time for Ford and Lincoln to get their hands on the large SUV market. This is by far my favorite generation of the Navigator. I absolutely loved the design of it. However, I might be a little biased, seeing as how my mom had two of these while I was growing up. Lincoln sort of went back to their roots and went with a more classic look, as you'll see in the interior. So this was a gauge display in a 2007 to 2014 Lincoln Navigator, and clearly, as you can tell, it was not supposed to look modern, but rather classic and retro, I guess you could say. As for the overall design of the interior, it didn't change that much. It was just a little bit more modern. You had a better touchscreen system, backup camera, parking sensors, front parking sensors, all the typical stuff that you should have in a luxury SUV. Then in 2015, we got a new body style Navigator. This was the first time it didn't have a V8 under the hood, and now it has a 3.5-liter V6 twin-turbo EcoBoost motor. My mom also had one of these generations, and while I absolutely loved this Navigator, I still think this body style looked really good. It could not compete with the Escalade at the time. The Escalade offered a fully digital gauge display, massage seats, suede headliner, and so much more that the Navigator just didn't bring to the table. And again, as you can see, they really didn't do anything to the interior except for modernize the steering wheel, modernize the touchscreen system a little bit, and add the typical Ford digital display at the time. Then 2018 came around, and we got the biggest redesign of the Navigator yet. While it still carried over that 3.5-liter V6 EcoBoost engine, it was finally offered in a variety of different trims, including the black label that you see here. When this Navigator came out, the Escalade knew it finally had some competition. This gen Navigator brought everything to the table, including a 360 camera, massaging seats, different drive modes, lit up running boards, anything you could think of, the Navigator finally had it. Then by the time 2021 comes around, the Escalade got a redesign and had some really good technology in it. So what did Lincoln do? They updated the Navigator. And by updated, I mean the smallest, most minor tweaks, including different headlights, a different grille, a little bit different taillights, and a larger infotainment system, as well as some different colors here and there and different interior themes like this dark green for basically Central Park. I don't know, it looks pretty cool though. I must say I am also biased towards this generation simply because my dad has one pictured right here. And if you're a fan of automotive photography, head over to my Instagram, it's linked in the bio. But as we sit right now, the Navigator's due for a redesign next year, so we'll see if it can actually compete with the Escalade again. As always, leave your thoughts and opinions in the comments below, and make sure to follow along for more videos like this.